welcome everyone to our special webinar where I pulled together a couple of my friends to help teach you how to edit like a pro. Now, keep in mind, we're using Luminar Neo. A lot of the techniques that we're talking about, the philosophy behind them can be used for Lightroom, Photoshop, and other programs you're using. But we're going to primarily show you how we do this inside Luminar Neo. Now, let me introduce you to the dream team. Let me hide I'll leave it for now. All right, so I have Joe Edelman and Carly Sullins. Hello, you two. So I picked these two for obvious reasons. My good buddy Joe over here is phenomenal at making complicated things seem very simple. And then Carly comes along, and what she's been doing with her painting is absolutely amazing. So I wanted her to share how she could take images and have a painterly-like effect inside Luminar Neo. All right. With that being said, Joe, I'm going to let you lead off, and I'll let you take over the screen.
All right. So first of all, gang, everybody that's here, thank you for tuning in this afternoon. I hope that you're all healthy and finding a lot of time to use your cameras, take pictures, and to learn how to process them. So that's what we're going to talk about. Now, I do things a little bit different. So really quick, I'm sure that everybody that's here is a Zoom pro, but I'm not going to be doing the traditional screen share. I'm going to be doing everything through my video feed. So if you're not seeing me full screen right now, look in the upper right-hand corner of the Zoom window and you'll see the word view. Click on that and select speaker view. And that way, whoever's talking is going to take up the whole screen. You'll see everything that I'm doing, but everything, my screen share and all that, it's going to come right through my video feed. So I also want to start out with a disclaimer and also a thank you to Skylum, because I am not sponsored by Skylum. I am a friend of Vanilla's. I think this is a safe group to admit that I'm a friend of his. But I am a guy that's passionate about photography and passionate about seeing people improve and very passionate about creativity. And I'm a firm believer that the cameras that we use today, most of them, of course, are digital. Most of them are mirrorless, but regardless, the pictures that we take are intended to be developed. The need for processing, it didn't go away when the world switched from film to digital. We just use a different kind of darkroom. And the best part is we don't need the chemicals and all the smell, right? And a dedicated room to do it. But the way our cameras are designed, especially for raw files, we're missing out on an incredible amount of creative opportunity if we don't take the time to process. Now, another thing that I'm a firm believer in is regardless of what software you use, and for, gosh, over 2 decades now, I've predominantly been an Adobe user. It's important to be aware of what software is out there, what's kind of coming through the pipeline and is available, because I myself, especially in the last 6 months, have been using Luminar Neo a lot more in addition to my regular workflow. And part of that is because I can take a file from Photoshop and I can round trip it into Neo, make some adjustments with some of the really, really cool Neo tools, and then go back to Photoshop and have a non-destructive edit. And if we have time later, we'll show you that, but that's a little bit more the advanced stuff. Here's the big reason why I love Neo and I love what Luminar has done with it. For photographers that are just starting out, learning how to process, or for that matter, photographers that have been shooting for a while and finding that they're in a bit of a creative rut, Neo is an incredible creativity tool. Inspiration. You could literally spend, I'm not even going to say hours, you could spend days in this piece of software just experimenting with various pieces of adjustments and presets and layers, all bits of things that you're going to see today, and get ideas that you can use in post and ideas that you could also use while you're actually shooting. So enough of my yapping. Let's go ahead and I'm going to switch over here. I want to start out. I'm primarily a studio shooter, but I do take pictures outside. So I thought I would start out with a picture that's not a studio shoot. It's not a fancy commercial shot. In fact, it's a picture that I took of my grandson on his first day of kindergarten this year. And it's a picture that a lot of people are going to take. So right out of the camera, this is what I'm dealing with. Now, it's not bad. I mean, we can look at it and we can say, well, yeah, you know, it's a family snapshot in that, and it's kind of good as is. Yeah, but, right? Let me remind you that even Ansel Adams, he was kind of the master Photoshop post-processing guy long before there was digital photography, right? He believed in the idea of creating a vision of what was in your mind's eye. And that's a philosophy that I've worked with throughout my career. And especially now with digital photography, that's very important to me. So as I open this image up in Neo, and I'm just going to enlarge things on my screen a little bit more so that I can show you some of the settings here. Over on the right-hand side, of course, this is where you've got all of your tools, the adjustments that you can make. This is where the real magic's going to happen. The very first section for favorites, I have 2 that are locked in there, and I locked them in there simply because they are the first 2 that I always look at when I'm working on a picture. They are part of the essentials group, which you see down here, okay? But I want to start with these, and I want to talk a little bit in depth about these because these aren't the sexy ones. We're going to leave the really, really cool stuff for Vanelli and for Carly. But I want to get into some of the basics for this reason. I know for a lot of photographers, and I'm sure a lot of people that are here, all of this post-processing stuff is kind of like the necessary evil of our photography. We didn't fall in love with photography because we want to have to do the post-processing. And sometimes it does. It feels like a chore, right? So one of the ways that you improve your abilities, one of the ways that you make sure that you're doing consistently good work with your post-processing is to create a workflow. Workflow is one of those fancy words for habits. You need a good set of habits. I recommend, and we'll see how Vanelli approaches it, and we'll see how Carly approaches it, because indeed, there's no right or wrong here. The right is have a workflow, have a set of habits. But for me, I always start in the develop panel. And honestly, this is the same if I'm working in any kind of post-processing software. I'm going to do my basic developing first. So when we expand this panel, just like we see in other pieces of software, we've got default color profiles. Obviously, it starts with a Luminar default. They even provide us with the Adobe standards if that's what you're used to. I actually find that I like the starting point, especially for outdoor pictures. For me, my taste, I like the camera standard, which is actually the setting that I use in my Sony cameras, is the standard color profile. So I start there. I know that I'm still going to be making adjustments. So as I look at this image, the first thing I want to do is I want to look and say, what can I do to improve this image for my taste? The dog, it's a little bit dark. I want to have a little bit of detail in the dog.
And Joe,
yes.
Joe, I'm sorry to step in. Yeah,
Yep.
people are saying they can't see the image.
Oh, I'm in front of the dog. Sorry. I forgot to move myself to the middle. My apologies.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Thanks, Vanelli. So I want a little bit more detail in the dog, and I know that I've got that detail in the shot. It's just a matter of lightening it. My grandson's face, a little bit yellow, which completely makes sense. The image is backlit. The sun is behind him. There's grass to his right. There's green trees and shade. Anytime you have that kind of foliage, you're going to have a lot of yellow in your light. So I'm going to want to clean that up a little bit. And I may even go ahead and get a little extra creative at the end. So the first steps for me are not exposure and smart contrast ever. Even if my image is a little dark or a little light, that's not where I begin. I always begin with highlights and shadows. Now, Neo has smart contrast compared to other programs that just have contrast. But for me, I'm a control freak. I want to be able to manage the highlights and the shadows independently and control them. So I almost always pull my highlights down pretty far. And then I'm going to bring my shadows up watching the dog. Now, hopefully you're noticing now, and it's always tough when we do this via Zoom, but hopefully you're starting to notice now, I'm right on the edge of the dog, almost starting to look like it's an HDR dog. And I don't want the dog to look HDR, but I'm actually going to do this intentionally. This comes from a little bit of experience, a little bit of practice. I'm going to make the dog a little bit more flat to start with. You'll see why in a moment. Next, I'm going to come down here to the blacks and whites, and here's where I'm going to bring my balance to this contrast, and I'm going to pull the blacks down because now you'll notice I've got the blacks back in the dog, but I have detail in the dog, especially through this area here, okay? Now, next steps for me, then I'm walking you through my standard developing workflow. Every single picture that I work on, whether it's a studio picture, or whether it's a picture of my grandkids, it goes through this exact same beginning, okay? So,
I'm sorry, Joe, just one moment, just one second. I'm sorry, I'm trying to fix the blurriness. One moment. Let me just, let me see if I can fix the blurriness.
Vanelli, their blurriness. Yep. We're on Zoom, unfortunately. It's probably a bandwidth issue.
Yeah, sorry, everyone, I tried.
So one thing, folks, if you're seeing things a little bit blurry now, I know that's really annoying. Here's what I would recommend you do. You're all going to have a watch link to be able to watch the replay. Watch the replay, and that eliminates the broadcasting aspect of it. So you'll have a recorded version, and you'll be able to get rid of that. If I enlarge the screen anymore, which I know would help a little bit,
that's fine.
I can't get the dog and the panel in at the same time, unfortunately. Okay. Sure. So some of my, shall we say, secret sauce settings, feel free to write these down and feel free to try them. They're not right. They are my starting point. You're more than welcome to try them out and use them. After I'm done these initial adjustments, which essentially are contrast and light and dark, even though you notice I didn't touch exposure, I'm going to come back to that. I'm going to go to, color. And every image that I work on, I start with vibrance at 30. I like color. If it's there, I want to see it, okay? Saturation, because there's a person in this, I'm going to give it about 2, because anything beyond that, I'm going to start to get really weird colors. And remember, I already said I've got too much yellow in his face, which I need to deal with that. We're going to come back and fix that, okay? From there, I'm going to go to sharpness. Every image that I work on, I give it a plus 25. That's it, okay? And I know for years we've been teaching photographers, never do sharpening until you get to output. That's wrong. It's completely wrong. The way the camera raw tools work, you can sharpen. You still don't want to over sharpen. You don't want to get to the point where you're seeing all kind of fringing and noise around your subject. No. But if you want to make your optics look their absolute best, hit some sharpening in camera raw while you're developing. Not once you're beyond that and you're working on a JPEG or a TIFF, but while you're in camera raw, okay? And let's see, optics. I always check these 3 boxes if they're there. One of the things that I love that Neo does, which Adobe doesn't do, depending on your picture, you're going to open up this optics panel. You won't necessarily always see all 3 of these choices. It really depends on what could apply to the shot. So Neo is essentially doing some thinking for you and letting you know, hey, you might want to pay attention to this, right? The reason why I automatically check them on every single picture that they're there is because it doesn't hurt to check them. In other words, there may not be chromatic aberration in this image. There may not be any distortion issues, and there may not be any fringing. But if I check them, there's nothing destructive that happens to the image at all. So it's one of those things that I can kind of set it and forget about it. In my mind, the setting is check it, move on, done. It's never going to degrade my image in any way, right? From there, I have got my basic processing done. I don't need any noise reduction on this. There's nothing else that I need to do in the develop panel. So I can close that. So now as I look at the image, I've got more color in it. I've got detail in the dog that I wanted. I still need to deal with the yellow. So I'm going to come down here to the essentials panel on the right. I'm going to expand the color. And at the bottom of it, we see HSL, which of course stands for hue, saturation, and luminance, right? So basically what I'm going to do, and I'm going to do kind of a down and dirty version of this. There's a lot of different ways that you can do it, but I really am only worried about his face and the arm. So I'm going to come down here. First, I'm going to switch to saturation. I'm going to grab the yellow slider and I am going to pull the yellow out until his face is cleaned up to a point where I like it. Now, of course, I lost all the beautiful yellow and the green and the rest of the scene. We're going to take care of that in a second. And since I'm really just paying attention to his face, I'm going to use that yellow to lighten his face ever so slightly. Done. In order to get the yellow back in the rest of the scene, all I'm going to do is click on mask. I'm going to click on brush and I'm going to click on erase. I'm going to go ahead and leave my strength at 100% because I want to do it quick. I'm going to make my brush fairly big to start. Softness actually doesn't need it to be at 100, but we'll bring it down a little bit. And I'm just going to go through and I'm going to basically remove the mask, or I should say, excuse me, remove the yellow everywhere except on his face. We'll do that now. I still got a little bit up in the trees there that I want to get that color back. So I'll go to a smaller brush and I also want the yellow back in his blonde hair. I just don't want it in his face. And that's it. So
Nice.
Now I'm pretty close to where I want to be. Yes, Finelli.
No, I just said nice.
Okay. Now, we can still have a lot more fun with this, but I want to show you two pictures in my 20-minute time slot here. So I'm going to do two more quick things to this. One thing that I do a lot, and hopefully you notice as you look at this picture now, in fact, let me zoom out just for a moment to show you, make sure you're seeing the whole picture. I put a lot of psychology into my images. And when I say psychology, I mean cognitive psychology. When we take pictures as photographers, we share them with the world, we can't tell people what we want them to see. We have to let them see what they see. But we can influence what they see. We all know that for composition, for instance, diagonal lines help draw your eye to the subject. So I almost always make it a point to have my subject's face, if it's a person, be the lightest or one of the lighter areas in the image. But another way that I do a tiny little cheat is I will grab a vignette just about somewhere between 6 and 10, just to pull the corners down a little bit, starts to again kind of push the eye to the center. But for a little bit of fun, to go ahead and make this a little bit more storybook so that when he looks back on this picture years from now, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to use the Sunray tool that Neo has for us. And for that, I'm going to go ahead and place the sun up here in the corner. And then I'm going to drag the amount slider and I'm going to start to create some sun rays. And right now, you notice it's darkening him and the rest of the image. That's okay. I'm really only paying attention to what's going to happen with the sun rays at this point. We're going to go right in there. And then I'm going to go to the masking tool, make a brush, click erase. I want to leave this one very soft and I'm going to go nice and big with it. And I'm going to clean up kind of the whole bottom part of the image here so that I don't have him getting darker. And so that kind of fades off. And there we go. So it's about imagining the potential of your images. Where can you take an image? Certainly sometimes there are things that they come out of the camera, they're great the way they are, that's okay. But I've honestly seen very, very few images in my career that can't be improved at least slightly with a little bit of post-processing. One other quick thing I want to show all of you, since I'm doing the basic stuff and not the sexy stuff here, okay? Up at the top, above this panel of all these tools, you get an edits tab. This edit tab, these are all the settings that I applied to the image, meaning they're non-destructive, meaning I can go back, I can make adjustments, I can decide, you know what, I don't want the sun ray, so I can go ahead and I can clear that out. In fact, I should have shown you also, my apologies, down at the bottom of the screen here, right below the picture, there's the original picture. Let me take myself out of the way again. There we go. There's the original picture. There's where we finished, okay? And I've got all of those settings that are here. Now, let's say I have a whole bunch of images that I'm going to do with similar settings from this event. I can go ahead and I can save those as a preset. I can get rid of them if I want to start over. Not that I would, but those are options. And then I can go ahead and I can export and I can save this image out as JPEG, TIFF. I've got the options from PNG, Photoshop file, PDF, all of that. It's a processed, developed image. So I want to show you one more really quick. Vinelli, do I still have a couple minutes left?
Nope. Yeah, let me jump in quick.
Go for it.
Bring you back. Yeah, I'll bring you back on this one.
That's
cool.
cool.
Thank you, Joe.
Sure.
All right. So now let me jump in for a minute. I want to share my screen and let me get, there we go. So you should be seeing my puffins, right? Dale, you able to see the puffins?
Yes.
And how's the quality looking?
It's about the same.
Okay. So
it
guys,
is. I
it
don't
is
know.
I'm
I didn't
sorry, I'm
see
sorry,
any massive blurry. Sorry.
all right, guys, sorry, it's definitely a Zoom issue coming in through here. All right, what I'm gonna do is this. I'm gonna come in and let's do, I want to do layers. All right. So here we are. Now, I did a photo shoot in Wisconsin, and unfortunately the model didn't show up. So I used my buddy Sterling as the model. Now I'm going to use him as the sports grit look. All right. So I'm going to show you what used to take me literally 15 to 20 minutes to create this. I'm able to do this in a matter of just a few minutes. First thing I'm going to do is come down here. And I do, like Joe, I like to start with increasing the contrast. All right, already it's looking better. Look at before, after, it's already looking better just with that. I notice that when I do studio shoots, Enhance AI is my absolute favorite tool. However, during a studio shoot, it's going to try to fix this black. I want it to be black. So I'm going to do the develop. Now jump down to creative and watch this, everyone. This is my sports grit look. I'm going to dial back the brightness a bit and bump. There it is. Look at this. This used to take Joel Grimes and myself hours to create. And once we mastered it, we were excited that we were able to do it within a few minutes. But look at this. I'm able to do this. I'll dial it back a bit. All right, that looks really good. Now, since we have the portrait tools, let's zoom in on his eyes. I'm going to come down. And by the way, if you notice, I'm collapsing the main panels just by clicking the top name of the actual panel. So here it is, portraits. If I click on it, it collapses and comes back. I'm going to come to face, and I'm going to add just a little light to his face, but his eyes are what I really want to work with. So I want to enhance the eyes, add a little, look at this, underneath the eye, just a little flare, move any dark circles, and here we go. I'll give it a second to render. So you should be able to see the difference. Look, before and after. Now that I have this set, I'm going to right click, adjustments, Actually, let me get out for you. Here we go. Right click, adjustments, copy. Now I'm going to apply it to these two and paste. Look at that. So the sports grit look was applied to my buddy, Sterling. Then I applied it over here. Now that I have that done, I'm going to click on a black 8x10. All right. So this 8x10 I'm using as a background. Yes, you need Canva or Photoshop or graphics program to create it. What I'm going to do is this. The images we just worked on, I want to add it to this layer. Now it starts out at opacity at 50. I'm going to crank that all the way up. So here we are with Sterling. And we're going to add Sterling again to another layer. Now in doing this, when I move the opacity to 100, this image is hiding what's underneath it. So if I were to hide that layer, we'll see that image. And let me do one last one. Here he is. Got it. All right. Now I can move the top Sterling to the top. And I'm going to move this Sterling a second. Now I have to somehow punch a hole in between this image so I can see the bottom image. Well, this is where the masking comes in on the layer property. I'm going to do portrait background removal, hit remove, and actually, let me go back to the top one. Here we go. Portrait background, remove. Now, if I move Sterling over, let me get back to it. Here we go. There we go. I didn't hit remove. I got a little too fast on the switch. There he is. So now I have Sterling on the bottom layer here. Well, here's the other Sterling. Let's move him over here. Now I'm going to click on the top again. And what I want to do is just add a little depth. So I'm going to enlarge this one. Pulling from the handles keeps it proportional. Now it looks like he's standing in front of them. And there we have it. So just by using the layers the way we just did, I'm able to take the edited images we created and now do something with this. Now, I did this as a joke for my buddy, but imagine if you're doing a photo shoot with your family members and you have all individual images. This is a way you could pull that all together again and put them as if they were shot, you know, at the exact same time. All right. So once again, we started with a blank slate and got a little creative with it. And that came from these images here. Again, before and after. Here we are, the before image and after. All right. Good. So now, how was that for everyone? Did that help you guys? Let me stop sharing my screen. Good. I hope that was helpful. And let me put myself back. There we are. All right. So I hope that was helpful for everyone. Now I'm going to turn it over to Carly. So Carly, how about you share your screen? All right, one moment. There we go. So here's Carly's screen. All right, Carly.
Okay, so I'm going to do a quick edit, how to show you how to turn a photo and make it look more painterly. You don't need to use a mixer brush or a smudge tool or any digital brush to do this process. This process can get more and more complex as you go along, but I'm going to show you a simple one first. The first thing you're going to do is do all those wonderful edits that Joe showed you And once you have all those edits done, I usually like to look at some cropping tools. So I have this cropping tool. Before I edit an image, I want to make sure that it looks good when I crop it. So I could move. Why can I move this, Vanelli?
You click on the top layer.
Yep, it's clicked.
Yep. Now go over to edit.
Layer properties. Okay. So usually it comes on like this. This is the golden ratio, which means whatever is most interesting or what you want people to look at your image, you want in the center of the spiral, and then everything spirals out. So I want to bring this crop just a little bit more. So this is kind of like Joe was talking about, the psychology of looking at things. Right now, I am doing that softly. I want people to look at this beautiful relationship with the girl and the dog. And that's telling me I need to crop this image in a little bit more. So I'm going to come over here to the right, hit crop, and then I'm just going to drag my corners. And this is an overlay I made because I like looking at cropping on an overlay. That way I can move it around and see what I have to work with. Once I get the crop right, I hit apply. Now I don't need this anymore. I'm going to hide this layer. I'm just going to click over here on the left and click hide layer. Next, I need to mask this girl and the dog. So similar to what Vanelli showed, make sure you're on the layer. Come over to masking on the right, click masking.
Yeah, 1 second, Carly. Yeah, just so everyone's clear, Carly's an artist, so she show them that layer again on top, the golden ratio.
Okay.
So
Yep.
she made this. Yep. So she made this, golden ratio. And what she's doing is she's putting it on top. And from here, it's helping her show you how to properly crop. So what I promised everyone, Carly, is that we're going to slow down just a little bit and explain a little bit more. I know we're rushing to try to get all this in an hour. So chances are we're going to go over just so we can get all this in for everyone. But yes, everyone, we'll slow it down just a bit for you. But yes, Carly created that. Thanks, Carly.
Yep, and this will be available in Luminar's marketplace. It comes with, I think, 24, 25 different kind of overlays you could use. The rules of third, which everyone is used to, actually stems from the golden ratio, which means you put the most interesting spots or most interesting places you want people to look, not in the center of your image. Now, sometimes you can break the rules and you have something amazing and you want to be in the center, and that's okay. But with the golden ratio, it's showing me this area with the girl and the dog is over here in the lower left, which is beautiful. To crop it, it made more sense to crop it because that's what this was telling me. And this is what visually is more appealing to people, because it's tried and true through nature, it's tried and true through art, throughout history. This has been a standard. So if we apply this to our own photos, we'll start to make people want to look and engage in our imagery. And this is not all on a conscious level. Often it's on a subconscious level. So that's why we use them. So I'm going to hide that layer and I want to mask the girl. So I'm going to click on the girl and then I'm going to click over here on masking and I'm going to click on AI mask. And now Luminar is asking me, do I want to choose a human? If the photo was more with floral, do I want to choose that? Is it an architecture imagery? We know this is prominently a human. So I'm going to click on the human. And now I'm telling AI, I want you to select the human. And AI inverted it, which is okay. It's not a problem. We're just going to click out, go back one step, hit mask actions, and we're going to invert. So now I have the girl and the dog by itself. I'm going to pull in another layer. So I come over, sorry, I went too fast. I hit the plus sign up here on my layers. And then I'm going to select a layer I want underneath it. And I'm going to select this one. Now, when you select any layer in Luminar, it's going to start at 50% opacity. That means this layer came in with 50% opacity. I'm going to turn that up to 100. And I know you can't see the girl anymore, so I'm going to want to bring the girl above this. So what I need to do is just slide her up, and now she's above this. I want to blend these two together because right now she kind of looks like a sticker on top of this layer. They're not too blended yet. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to leave the background layer just as it is. So this, you want to think of this background layer as the background to your painting. This is my canvas. I'm going to leave that background layer just as is, but I'm going to duplicate it. So I'm going to hit on this layer, and right here there's an option that says duplicate layer. I'm going to go ahead and do that. So now Luminar duplicated a layer, and I'm going to bring that above the girl. I can't see her, but watch what I do when I start to bring down the opacity.
Ooh,
And
nice.
slowly she comes. Now, what I want to do is I don't need this super high or super low. It takes it all off. I just want a little bit to bring these two together. And there's no rocket science to this. This is kind of what you like and what you feel. I'm going to leave it about right here in the upper 20s. Now I want this blended a little bit more. I really like some of the texture to this background layer, and I want to blend that into the girl a little bit more. The reason why I added this layer on top of the girl is because we don't want her to be without any texture from this background, because then that won't look blended. And I'm going to do this again. I'm going to duplicate the background layer again. I'm going to bring this up on the very top. And I'm going to come over to masking. I'm going to grab a brush. I'm going to choose erase. I want my softness up to 100%. I want my strength down to about a 46. And now I kind of know she's over here. I'm just going to start erasing parts off. And this is the part where it kind of feels like you are actually painting your picture. So you can see how this is, with these multiple layers, you're getting more of that blended look. And if I erase too much, I can switch it. I could toggle this over to paint, and then I could add the paint back in.
So you're sandwiching your layers,
Yep.
your textures on top of the image.
Yep. And the reason you do this is because it creates depth and it creates interest. And you could be selective where you are bringing interest to your photo. So you want to bring interest to the face and the eyes. You want, kind of like Joe was saying, you want the light to go there. I have a lot of texture going on, so I kind of want the opposite happening where I want people to look. If this was all smooth, then I would want more texture in other places. You're just kind of helping guide the eye. So this is what we had before, and this is what we ended up with.
Nice. Very good.
Are there any questions on that?
Nope, you had an applause.
Okay.
Great job, Carly.
Yeah.
All right.
The next
so
one I do will be more complicated.
Carly,
All right.
Carly, there
All
is
right. You want to stop sharing?
Okay. There's a question.
relative to the link for the golden ratio, your marketplace resources.
Yes, it should be up today. Last I checked before this meeting, it hasn't been up yet, but should be up today if they go to the marketplace. Check later today or tomorrow.
All right. All right, great. All right, so now we're gonna have Joe come back on. And everyone, I am glad you're saying, hey, you guys are going so fast. Thank you for letting us know. Remember, we want to make this as if you're sitting with us in a coffee shop. So mention it and we'll slow down a little bit. Joe, you're going at a very good pace. I got my New York attitude going because I'm trying to get so much crammed in. So I'll slow down just a little bit and that'll work out. All right, Joe, take over.
V?
All right.
Yes.
We just have two questions there before we go to Joe for Carly there.
And where are you seeing the questions?
In
Okay.
the Q&A.
Gotcha. Fire away.
Are those backgrounds your own originals, and are they available somewhere, obviously marketplace? And the second one is, how do you deal with hard lines around the hair?
So the backgrounds are on Luminar Marketplace right now. That one that I just used is in the Old Masters kit. So each backgrounds have 10 different ones in them. So that one came from Old Masters. And how I deal with the hard edge is the blending of the layers. So you have that background layer, and then you have your photo, and you go bring it above and bring down the opacity and just kind of do that brushing, which I showed you. I did it really fast. So if I wanted to make sure there's a hard edge around her, I would just work and really soften that area and pay attention to it.
Thank you.
Awesome. And that answers the question that you're asking about how do you get the edges? And again, it's a finessing back and forth with the opacity. And yes, a Wacom tablet would do wonders with that.
It does, but you don't need a Wacom tablet. I actually end up using my mouse a lot. So don't feel like you have to go and get a Wacom tablet, because we are not painting with pixels with a mixer brush or learning how to digitally paint. You're just playing with the masking. And what's wonderful about this technique is when you make quote mistakes is when amazing things start to happen. When you allow some of that painterly layer merge over your photo, and all of a sudden you're like, I didn't intend that, but it looks really cool and interesting. I'm going to keep it. So as you keep layering and doing this, all those quote mistakes end up being very, very interesting to the final piece.
Awesome. Well, thank you. All right, let's Joe hop in.
Cool. Can I first of all just say an amen to what Carly just said? This whole process of creating is the idea that you have to be willing to make mistakes. It's not a precision process. So in Carly's case, the brilliance of what she's doing is it's kind of a cheat on the traditional way that we, think of, oh, if you're going to do stuff, you have to use, like a pen masking tool, and you have to do a perfect outline, and then you're going to put all this stuff together. But actually, no, you don't, because if you think about it, she's doing painterly effects. Painters aren't that exacting, right? So there's a lot more exploration and creativity, and you've got to be willing to do the failure. And that's what I thought I would share in this next one. This is an image of mine. I took this shot, actually, it was a test frame during a demo that I was doing back when I was an Olympus ambassador. And it's kind of cool. The reason it was a test frame and it didn't work out, I was showing people how you could spray water and use it to put texture in the background. You can kind of see it's there, but it didn't really work on this frame. Okay, but she's got a great expression. The lighting's nice. I love the color palette. So I thought I would go ahead and see what I could do with this image using some of the layers that are already in Neo that it comes shipped with. But the key for me is anytime I'm going to click on a preset or use a layer that's already there, I'm aware that thousands, hundreds of thousands, if not millions of other people are having access to those same tools with those same settings. I don't want my pictures to look like everyone else's. So I'm going to go ahead and use those tools, but I'm going to find ways that I can experiment with them and kind of change it up a little bit, if you will. So let me go ahead and I'll enlarge things here again a little bit, move this over so that you can see the tabs, make sure I'm out of the way. Fortunately, this image doesn't really need a whole lot of developing work, but just like I showed before, I'm going to come in and pull highlights down. The only highlight I'm really worried about is actually her chest and her shoulder. I'm going to bring my shadows up because I want the detail. And again, I'm leaving the image looking a little flat. And then I'm going to come to my blacks and I'm going to pull it down to get kind of the feel that I want. From there, I will go to color. I will add in my 30 vibrance, and I'm only going to go to a 2 on saturation. If I go any higher, just so you can see, and actually this is a point that's worth mentioning for those of you that are starting to learn processing. I completely get it. And I saw some comments go by earlier. When you're new to software like this, it's overwhelming. And that's not a slam on Luminar Neo. That's a slam on any kind of processing software out there because there's so many things that it could do. And if you read the books, even some of you commented just listening to us, either it's too fast or maybe we're going over your head. It can be overwhelming. I completely get it. Honestly, the easiest way to learn these tools is come in here and grab a slider. And what happens if I pull the blacks all the way down? What happens if I pull the blacks all the way up? And simply experiment, spend a little bit of time in the software and see what the different settings do, because you're already hearing us talk about ideas that we use that are not really the way the software is intended to be used, but it works. So you can read all the instruction manuals you want. You're never going to find the cool stuff. You got to experiment. So if I were to push that saturation up, she goes orange right away. So I'm going to stick with just about the 2 there. And that's it. Sharpness, again, I'm going to add my 25. That's my starting point. Optics, I've got all 3 of the boxes checked because they're not going to hurt anything. And I'm actually, no, I'm not. I'm not going to lighten it at all. So I'm done my developing. I want to go look at tools that I have available here. So I'm going to keep this one, honestly, pretty simple. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to use some of the portrait tools down here at the bottom. And I am going to lighten her face just a little bit. As I explained before, I always like the face to be the lightest part of the image. On her eyes, I'm going to do the cheat this time. Next to the word iris here, I'm going to click a tab and I'm going to go with honey, which is kind of a yellow. Now, for some of you, just to be fair, before you get mad at me, that may sound like or seem really off. If you check out my website or my YouTube videos, this young lady, her name is Monet. She does makeup for a lot of my stuff. She normally wears yellow contacts. On this particular day, she wasn't. So actually, this is what she looks like in most of her photographs, okay? And the best part is the software did that for me. I didn't have to do a whole lot of work. One thing I almost always do in my creative portraits, you have to be careful about doing this if it's a regular portrait for someone, but I will enlarge the eyes between 2 to 4 just to make them a little bit bigger. In the human brain, one of the primary markers for what we determine beauty by is how large are the eyes. So I don't want them to become caricatures in any way, but I'll usually give them just a little bit of a bump. She doesn't really have any dark circles and her eyebrows look great. So there's really nothing I need to do there. And since I've used the eye detail that's in the software, I don't really have to do any of these other adjustments other than possibly the whitening. We'll make sure we clean up the whites of her eyes a little bit. And that's good. For her mouth, lips already have a lot of color. I don't need to saturate them. I am going to darken them just a tad. And I don't need to do any teeth whitening because there's no teeth. Close the face panel. And then next up down here is the skin panel. For this one, I'm always going to check skin defects removal. And then I'm going to start at around 50. Some of you may feel that's maybe too aggressive. In fact, let me go ahead and enlarge this even more so that you can see where we're at. So before, after, before, after. I don't feel that's too aggressive, but if you do, you can adjust it differently. Also from the standpoint of shine, this image doesn't have, well, here, let me zoom back out. It doesn't have a lot on her face, but she's got a little bit actually on her chest. So I'm going to come up and that's where I'm going to work with that. Now, I told you I wanted to play around with some of the layers that are included in Luminar. So just for a moment, let me zoom back out here to show you all of it. I'm going to come over to the layers panel. I'm going to click the plus. And of course, here we have the flares, the light leaks, the sparklers, all these are included with the software. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to grab one of the flare layers and I'm going to drop that in there. And I'm just going to make it just a tad bigger. And I'm going to even, yeah, we'll bring the opacity up to about there. Okay. And that's where we're going to set that. Now, I don't want to lose the contrast on the face. That's my personal preference. You may be okay with the image kind of taking a little bit of a flared vibe to it. And that's fine. But I'm going to go ahead and hit the masking tool, grab a brush, nice, decent sized brush, but I'm going to keep it very soft. And I'm going to bring the strength down to, I don't know, 60, 70. I just don't want it at 100%. And I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to kind of blend out into the darker parts of the hair and down into her neck a little bit. And I think, okay there. Let's see here. We're going to, yeah. Now I know I took some of that light piece out on the side. Don't worry. You'll see why, because I'm also going to add a couple different ones here, right? In fact, for me, this is a good point to go ahead and do my crop. I waited because I wanted to see where the different colors were going to come in on the flares and what I would decide to do. So in my case, since I do a lot of teaching and I do this stuff on YouTube, the overwhelming majority of my images at this point are going to go into some type of a video format. So I've just kind of evolved to the point where I tend to use a 16:9 format most of the time. That is by no means saying that you should be doing that, but for me, that fits. That way I don't have to have black bars or edges on the images on my videos. So I'm going to go to 16:9 and I'm going to kind of leave her right in around there. And I'm going to apply that. And then I'm still, as I mentioned before, probably going to come back on the vignette, darken those corners down just a little bit. And then I've got a finished image. I'll take myself out of it there. So, you know, it's a way to kind of continue to explore the creative potential. I'm a big fan, whenever possible, of knowing where I want the picture to go when I take it. But look, the reality of it is that we don't always know. Software like this is an excellent opportunity to explore the creative potential of your work. And that's not a sales pitch. That's how I'm using it. So.
Oh, thank you, Joe. All right, I'm going to jump in again. Let me share my screen.
V?
Yes.
We did have one question
Yes,
that's for Joe.
Sure.
Relative. Can you enlarge one eye?
Yes.
Or how would you?
Can I enlarge one eye? What is that going to show you? I can, and certainly switch back and enlarge one eye. Yeah, I mean, oh, I'm sorry. Can you enlarge one eye on the tool? No.
Yeah.
No.
Yes.
Sorry.
So
yeah.
So the way to enlarge just one eye in the tool is to apply it to both, and then just go back with a mask
out. Okay.
and just paint. Yeah.
There you go.
And paint
Right.
it out.
Right. It doesn't allow you to select just one though, but that would completely work. Super simple. Yeah. And
Gotcha.
like anytime you're switching between different kinds of software, it's not uncommon to have a different path to get to the same end result.
Awesome. Joe, I love that shot. Thank you. All right. So I'm going to slow it down just a bit. And with this, when we took this shot, I loved it. I didn't have a tilt shift lens. So look at the keystoning, the whole problem going on with the lighthouse. So I'm going to come over here and I'm going to start out with the essential tools. And because This is a raw image. I have the raw processing at my fingertips. What I want to do is come down here to transformation. One click. Look at that. Now I at least straightened it to where it doesn't give you that tilt feeling. So now that I have that image set, what I'm going to do is I'm going to come up here before I do any of the cropping. Same concept. Enrich the black tones. And then I'm going to bring out the whites just a bit. But I'm going to do something a little bit different. Here's my best friend, Enhance AI. All right, so right here, I want to do Accent AI. And look what it's automatically doing. Look how it's taking the sky, the house, all of it. Look how it's bringing it to life from this to this. All right, now that I have that set, now I'm going to do the cropping. All right, and I'm going to think how I can either keep it as the original or how do I want to print this? If I do a 4x5, then that's a traditional 8x10 print. If I get a little more fancier, I do like 16x9 because then I can make it look almost like a panorama on my wall. So I'm going to crop it in and hit apply. Now, if I don't feel it straightened it as much as I want it to, I can come back here to the edits. And this is where, think of this as your history. So I'm going to come down to develop raw where we were, transform. Now watch, we already did this. But now I'm going to take it another step further. And I just want to adjust the vertical just a touch more. Now, if I go back, there it is. That looks much better. What I'm looking for. Now, let's attack just the red roof on the house. So I'm going to come to colors. And here I find if I take the vibrancy, I'm going to bump it up a bit. I like to take saturation and do the opposite. So think of saturation as a global change. It affects all the pixels evenly. Vibrancy affects only the muted images or the muted colors in the image. Now, HSL is for hue, saturation, and luminance. What I'm going to do is this. I'm going to close it. Now, when I reopen it, what I just did was I added a second instance of color. So now it's working as a second tool. If I click on edits, you'll see it'll appear over here. So now that I have color selected, what I want to do is come down to red. So I want that red to be more saturated. So I'll go to an extreme. Yep, I can see it. There's probably some orange in it too. Yep, sure enough. That's look how the red started to bump. Now, what I want to do is come to mask, brush, and I only want to apply that red here. So if there's red elsewhere in the scene, I don't want to mess with it. So I'm going to click on paint. And I'll just come in and paint the roof. Good. Let's see if it makes a difference. Look, before and after. I'll zoom in a little bit more so you can see it. Before, after. Now that I have that set, well, now I can come in and I can make all my adjustments, and it's only going to affect just that roof where I painted it. So here's luminance. I can make it brighter or darker. Same thing with the orange. So what we just did was we went global, changed the entire image, and then with a mask made it local. All right. So if I click on edits again, notice there's two instances of color. The first one we did and then the second one. So you can stack them on top of each other and get very, very creative. All right. Now, one last thing. Vignette. I want to choose a subject. And in this case, you know what? I do want the house to be predominant. I'll go to an extreme so you can see what we're doing. So I went to an extreme. Notice I can pick where I want the focus of the vignette to be. I want it right about here. I'll dial it back a bit. Now, here's the beauty. Inner light. Look at this. I'm going to add just a little light to draw your eye. Now watch. Let's see if it makes a difference. Here's the original. Boom, look at that. Look how just that little inner light drew the viewer into that scene itself. Now, we can continue and do more edits with this particular image. I like the sky. That's the original sky. I can come in, adjust the sky a little bit more, add more of a dramatic. In fact, Carly, before I hand off to you, I will show you one tool that all my landscape Freds swear by, and that's mystical. All right, I'm going to go to an extreme. That gives you that dreamy type look. So let's dial it back just a little. And I'm going to smooth it out. Look at the shadows. Good. Now, it may not look like we did a lot, but look at that. Look how it gives that dreamy type look to the clouds. Now, you may or may not like that. That's entirely up to you. But that's just an addition that you can add to that. All right. So, okay, who said that? Joe said, anybody knows the X over the house? Yeah. So if you don't like it, use the erase tool, erase it. That really doesn't bother me too much. Not quite sure what happened there during the photo shoot, but there we have it. All right, Dale, let's open it up for some questions.
Yes, sorry, I was just responding to a couple. There's continuing questions about your marketplace, Carly, relative to your newest stuff, and I have announced that that's going to be available in the next couple days. Is that correct?
Yes. Yeah.
And then in addition, about how you soften the edge of the original mask, which I think we've covered.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. There's questions on printing, which I don't think is applicable, so I think we're fine.
We can talk about that after we're done here. All right. Good. All right. Now, Kathy's asking, what is Marketplace? Marketplace is, in fact, Dale, could you put that in the chat?
I cannot
if you
post
want
to the
additional. Oh,
I post the link. I can show real quick, Vanelli.
well, yeah, just here. Yeah, put it. Let me do this real quick. Carly, 1 second. All right, here's Marketplace. So if you go to skylum.com/marketplace, or if you're on the Skylum website here, just come over here to Marketplace. And here you'll have different assets you can purchase, presets. Some of them are free, some of them you have to pay for. And let's see, this was Carly's here. So her direct one is marketplace/artist/her full name, Carly-Sullins. And you could look at some of these here. All right.
Vanelli, can I point something out to you really quick? In the chat,
Fire away.
Carly gave you the link to the marketplace and I gave you the link to my socials. We don't have permissions to post to the attendees. We can only post to ourselves.
Gotcha.
So you're the one that can post that information in the chat. All you have to do is copy and paste it. Copy and paste it into the chat, send it out to everybody.
I put it in the answers to the questions, so it was also should be in the Q&A responses.
All right, there's one. All right. Let
No,
me-
that's the
thank
that's
you.
the Zoom link. Right.
Yeah, I'm gonna re-grab it again.
Okay.
And then 2 questions regarding the session here, Vanelli, is when will it be available? How will it be available? And for those that didn't register, how will they access? Sorry, that's
Yeah,
3.
So if you're registered, guess what? It's easy. You'll receive an email that says where the rebroadcast is. If they didn't register, be a good friend and give it to one of your friends who didn't register it. All right. And Joe, it's not letting me copy and paste.
Out of the chat?
So I could, yeah. Yeah, it just makes me select all. Thank you, Zoom. All right.
Must
Good.
be a
All right.
Windows thing.
Yep. All right, so no, it's not a Windows thing. All right, let me stop sharing my screen. And Carly, save us with this, please.
Okay. All right, I'm gonna do another one for
Oh.
you.
I gotta tell, I love this one. You tricked me, so let me see. I gotta see the answer to this, Carly.
Okay, so I know that in the first one we did, you took a painterly background, you took, could be any photo, could be stock or your own photo, and we learned how to blend the two. And people think, well, I didn't do too much because the painted background was already there for me. This is when the foundation of choosing your painted background or your different assets become more your own creation. And I just want to say that there has been an artistry that's been out there for a long time called collage artists, where your artistry is taking different assets, either you created yourself or you found it, and you blend them together. And that is a whole legit artistry. And this is kind of what we're doing in a digital age. So I have this photo. This is a stock photo. And I'm choosing not to cut this out because I really like this background. And I like that the vase is sitting on something. It wouldn't make sense to cut this out because then the flowers would be floating. But it's your artistic discretion to do what you want. If you want floating sunflowers, that can look cool in itself too. But for me, I'm not going to cut this one and mask it out. I'm going to
Carly. Yeah, Carly,
Yes?
before we go any further, I'm sorry. And in your Zoom window, could you move they're saying that they can't see you. I guess your image is taking up the screen. Do you have a dual monitor or no?
No.
No, she's not over
Okay,
top
could
of it, Vanelli.
I'm
Yeah,
not fancy like
so-
you two.
Yeah, so Bob, there's something on your end. There we go. All right, I'm sorry, continue.
Okay. So I pulled this layer again, the golden ratio, and it comes in this way, but maybe what's interesting is in the top right hand corner, not the bottom left. That's okay. You pull it in, you come over to the right hand side where it says layer properties, and over here these buttons that look like 2 triangles. I click on this one and it changes it over to the right. It's a horizontal change, and I click on this one is a vertical change. So right now, this is telling me the most interesting part is the top right corner, which is what I want to draw the eye to. I'm not going to crop this one. I kind of like how it is. So if you're doing a lot of collages, I like to have this on and even bring the opacity down. If I wanted to bring in more flower petals, I would follow this curve of this line because this is creating a sense of the eye going to places. If you follow my art, you would notice my art has a natural curve and flow. It's because I use this tool all the time. This is one of my top secrets. Okay, so now I'm going to hide this. So I know everything's working. I am going to pull a layer, and this time it's coming from the grunge pack. It is, what number? Grunge number 9. I'm just going to add it. And again, once you add a layer in Luminar, it brings it in at 50%. I am going to change the opacity. I'm going to bring this up to about 72%. So this time we're not masking anything. We didn't cut out the background. We're just bringing in this and placing it over our image. I like how this grunge pack added this texture to the left here, but I lost some of my flowers over here. That's okay. Instead of cutting out the flowers and putting it on top, I'm just going to use a mask. So I'm going to click over here on the right-hand side, click masking. I'm going to grab a brush and I'm going to choose erase. And I'm going to leave softness to 100%, but I'm going to bring my strength down to about 40%. And then I'm just going to erase off this layer just a little bit so I can pull those flowers out and some of this base. And if you go too far, that's okay. Again, you could choose paint and you could add things back in. So what my goal is in doing this is I am trying to create depth and interest. Now, if I wanted to add more texture to this image, I could add another layer. It could be another background layer, or it could be a completely new layer. So I'm going to choose another layer here. And this is a whole texture pack. So this is what this looks like, which looks like what artists would maybe paint on or a painted wall. I'm going to change the blend mode now to multiply. Now, blending modes can be really, really confusing. The question, and I like how Joe said this is what I do when I get into an editing software I don't know, like what's going to happen if I do this, is to ask the question, what happens if I move the toggle to the right? What happens if I move the toggle to the left? What happens if I choose a different blending mode? And you don't have to always know the science behind what's happening. You just have to know, do I like it? So I do like that the multiply is bringing out the darker areas and bringing out this texture, but all of a sudden it darkened my photo too much. So on this layer, I'm just going to come down to develop, and I'm going to use exposure, and I'm going to bring that brightness back in. So now I have layer and I have texture, and I'm just creating more and more layers. Now, this is where it gets really fun. I'm going to bring in some overlays. So I'm going to hit over here on the left, add a layer. I want to see all the ones I brought in. And
okay. Now I see what you did. Okay, go on.
I'm going to choose this one. So again, I bring it in, it's at 50%. I want to, this is what I did. It's an overlay PNG, which means it's already looks like a drip, but you can still see through it because it's a PNG. All the cutting and masking's been done for you. And you can move it around and see what it looks like. Now, not everything fits every picture every time you drag it in. You get choices. How are you going to create this PNG or this painted background with this photo? To me, I want to make these drips smaller. So I want to bring this up here and bring it to the top. And I'm going to pull on the bottom and just bring those drips down. And then raise that back up. And then I'm going to bring that opacity down just a little bit now that I see it happening. And then all I need to do, since I made this smaller and I want to have that continuity of drip across, I'm just going to duplicate this layer. So I'm going to duplicate it, click on it and let it duplicate, and then I'm going to move it over. And then I need to duplicate it one more time. And then I'm going to move it over to finish off the drips on the top. And then I could play with each of these layers. I could bring, maybe I want more drips to come down on the right. So it's not all like an even across, because you create more interest when things are not all symmetrical. And then I'm going to add drips, another drip layer, because why not? I'm going to add this one actually. Hold on, I grabbed the wrong drip layer. Let me delete that. Just hit remove. Okay, hit add. See all. Grab this drip. This one has, let me bring it all the way up so you can see it. It has a lot more color and vibrancy. So what I do in my art is I don't want to hit the viewer with a huge knockout punch. I love adding these subtle detail where people just kind of can stare into the art and start finding things that they may have not seen the first glance through. So I just like adding these subtle layers and layers and layers. So with all these layers, we're kind of losing the flowers, the original photo. That's okay. Here's an easy fix. I'm going to come all the way down to my original photo. I'm going to duplicate it. I'm going to bring it all the way to the top. And then I'm going to bring the opacity down. So now that brought that vibrancy back. And you can kind of see how this is all layering. Now I want to make it look like the sunflowers are dripping with paint. So I'm going to add another layer. I think Vanelli asked me once how many layers I had in a piece. And I said, I think I had over 100. But
God.
This is where it gets fun and exciting and it becomes more your own. So this layer I chose because it has those blacks and greens. So I'm bringing up the opacity so you can see it. Oh, wrong layer. If you're on the wrong layer, that's okay. Just come back up to the right layer. I'm going to bring this up so you can see this has those blacks and yellows.
Gotcha.
It's not fitting the flowers. That's okay. I'm just going to make it small. And I'm going to kind of look where this one yellow drip is and decide where would that look really neat just dripping off. Right here. Kind of looks really neat here. These black drips don't make sense here. That's okay. I'm going to use my masking. I'm going to grab a brush. I'm going to hit erase. I want this at 100% because I don't want this black drips right here. I just want to isolate that yellow drip. And if I wanted to make that drip come down even more, I just grab the layer and pull it down. You can make it as drippy or short as you want. And
that's how you tricked me.
That's how I tricked you. And if I want to do that again, I can grab this drip again and add it. So you could use the same layers, the same textures, the same drips over and over again, and just move them to where it makes sense for that particular image. And another question I like to ask myself, is this helping my picture or is it not helping my picture? Is it enhancing? If you don't know, kind of keep it there or mask it. But that's always a good question because sometimes you can go too far with this. I'm just going to pull those black drips. I want it to look like the sunflowers dripping that black, which looks really cool there. And I just want to mask this a little bit. So then I go back to the masking. I hit brush, I hit erase. I want 100% because there's certain areas I don't want that.
So that's how you tricked me.
So this is what our before, and this is how we made it look painterly without ever using a digital brush.
Nice. Oh, it was earlier today. I saw that. I asked her, and Carly said, "Sorry, you'll have to check back during the webinar to see it." All right. Let me do this real quick.
Couple questions, Benelli, for Carly.
Yes.
Are the drip layers in Luminar Marketplace? And
so
are you able to use Neo to change the color of the layers?
Right. Okay. So that's a really good question. So Vanelli, I'm taking over again.
Yeah. Take over the screen.
So yeah, that's a really good question. So say like you have these drips and maybe this wasn't sunflowers. Maybe you didn't need yellow. Maybe you needed a different color here. On that layer, you can click that and change the colors just like we've been showing you. Come down to color, come to your hue, saturation, and luminance panel, and then you can start changing the drips to be whatever color you want. I try to make these packs have different colors in it so you don't have to come and fine tune them. But if you need to, you can. You can come and play with different colors, shift the colors to what you need. So that's that question. What was the other question? Oh, are they going to be available? Yes. So these drips are going to be available on Luminar Marketplace. The textures are coming out probably next week. And then I'm going to start rolling out these different overlays, drips, paint strokes, different things that you could continually add on and layer and layer and layer. And then eventually it just becomes more your own creation, just like any other collage artist out there. You're just doing it in the digital realm. And
So we got
awesome.
Pardon?
We got a lot of questions on that, and I just want to say what you're saying is they're going to be rolling out over the next probably couple of weeks different packs.
Yes.
So if you don't see it there yet, please check
Yes.
back.
Yes.
All right, for everyone else, what I'm trying to do is get you those links. I'm not doing a great job. I apologize.
Benelli, while you're working on
Oh,
that,
here-
can I answer a couple questions?
There it is. Yep, yeah, 1 second.
All right,
Joe.
cool.
They're there. Take a screenshot of this, everyone. So here's what Joe's. Here's I don't know why it's not allowing it. Look at this.
You could add it in the follow-up email when you send the link for everyone to
That's
rewatch
true.
it.
All right. So Joe, fire away.
All right, so just a couple questions that were in the chat really quick. John Wells, wouldn't you use curves? I hate curves. Curves suck. But if you love them, use them. The cool part about all this processing stuff, the only thing I understand where your question's coming from. I get that question a lot, John. So I'm not trying to like bust on you. Here's the thing, right? If that's how you were taught and that's what you're comfortable with, then man, go for it. Like use what works for you. I don't care if it's Neo or if it's Photoshop or, PhotoLab from DxO or Affinity, any of them. There's like a million different ways to do things, right? For me, for my work, I find it clunky. For a lot of landscape photographers, they swear by curves and it makes sense, right? So at least understand that there's not a right way to do it, because look, when you share your pictures with somebody, or even if you just stick them on Instagram, the only people that give a darn, which is not how I'd normally say it if you know me, the only people that give a darn about how you did it is other photographers. In my books, no offense, folks, they don't count, right? When people look at your pictures, they either like them or they don't like them. But I saw a question go by. This is the one that I really wanted to get to. And let me just get back to it. Sorry, it was Bev that asked it. When you get the image processed just the way you want it, how do you save the new image to your hard drive file? So Bev, I'll show you. I still have the picture that I was working on. So if I was going to go ahead and save this picture, let me make this bigger on the screen, and I'm going to come all the way up into the corner. So if you look all the way up in the right-hand corner, there's that little arrow for the save. I'm going to click on that, and then I get a choice of disk, messages, mail, or connect to the app on a device. Just click disk, and then it brings up the dialog where I can, here, let me get that up on the screen here. Is it going to let me move it? It's not going to let me move it. So let me zoom back out so I can show you. There we go. It'll bring up the dialog so I can navigate to where I want it on my computer. I can change the name, and then if I want, it's basically like export settings. I can add sharpening. This would be output sharpening. Resize it if I want, change the color space if I want, save it as a JPEG, PNG, TIFF, JPEG 2000, Photoshop PSD file or a PDF, and then also my resolution. So it's basically in the upper right-hand corner of the interface where you're going to find all that.
Awesome. All right, I have 2 minutes left. What I want to do real quick is this. Share the screen. All right, so for a lot of people, we're asking, Joe mentioned earlier, how do you reorganize your workspace to make it your own? Me personally, I like clicking on the categories, and that collapses them, because what I use under the professional tools, I use super contrast quite a bit. So if all of these are collapsed, it's hard to get to that one. So what I try to do is keep all of these like this, and then go to that one. Now, if I desperately want that to the top, right click, add to favorites. And now look what happened here. So the tools that you use on a regular basis, you may just add to your favorites up here. And of course, let's not forget my dramatic tool. There we are. So here we are. These are my favorites. And if I don't want them in my favorites, all right, then what I can do is right click, remove, and it puts it right back in the categories. All right, so that was one way for you to organize your workspace. And then Joe already mentioned how to export your images after you create it. You can export it. Typically, I like to export it back to the same folder that the original is in, but I put an underscore complete. And so now I know that in this particular photo shoot, these are the completed images, and that's where I put it. All right. So that's it. Now let me get everyone back again. All right. And I'm going to switch views to gallery. Here we are. There. All right, everyone. And I apologize for this here. Well, Joe and Carly, thank you two so much for taking time out, especially on a Friday. And for everyone else, this was awesome having you here. And thank you for your feedback when you were talking. If there's information or questions you have, please feel free to reach out to Joe. In fact, Joe, where can we find more about you?
Easiest place is my website, joeedelman.com. That has the links to all my socials. You can find me every Wednesday evening at 6 p.m. Eastern time on YouTube. I do a show called The Last Frame Live. So if you have follow-up questions for me, feel free to tune into The Last Frame Live next Wednesday and ask your questions, and I'll answer them live and gladly even do a little bit more Neo demo during the show.
Awesome. And Carly, other than the marketplace, that's the best place to reach out.
Yep. And
Where
or
else?
carlysullins.com.
Awesome. All right. Well, great. Thank you so much. And again, for everyone else, thanks so much for watching us. And please, if you have like this session was designed more for the advanced type of user, but we realized when we got into it, there were more people in there wanting to learn how to use Luminar Neo. So if you want a webinar purely on the basics of Luminar Neo, please give that a suggestion to Skylum, and I could talk to them about putting together something along those lines. But overall, thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you guys at the next webinar.